Chosen one, there is a glow around you now that cannot be captured by mirrors or explained by language. It is not a surface brightness. It is the kind of light that originates in places that were once dark. Wounds healed in silence, disappointments transformed into lessons, solitude forged into strength. This glow isn't cosmetic, and it isn't intentional. It simply is, like firelight in the soul, flickering quietly through your eyes, your stillness, your walk. You didn't ask to become luminous. You endured, you refined, and over time, your spirit stopped reflecting the world around it and began illuminating it. Your glow is not boastful. It doesn't try to be impressive. It simply makes people pause. They don't understand it at first. All they know is that when you enter the space, something changes. Conversations adjust. Laughter becomes more sincere. Noise softens. Truth becomes easier to say. And for some, especially women who live in a world flooded with masks and performances, your glow feels like the first honest thing they've seen in a long time. You're not selling attention. You're not chasing reactions. You don't move to be seen. Yet somehow, all eyes are drawn to you, not because you're loud, but because your spirit listens. Not because you decorate yourself, but because you walk in the raw dignity of someone who has nothing to prove. There's an elegance now in how you exist, in how you look at others, not to appraise them, but to witness them, in how you stand, not to dominate space, but to bless it with calm. And that glow, that deep firelight, speaks louder than charm or style ever could. It says, here stands someone who has met their shadows, survived their silence, and chosen to walk forward anyway. They call it glow because it radiates, it moves through time. It doesn't just light up moments, it lingers. You leave it behind on door handles, in handshakes, in the memory of your voice. You leave it behind in the way someone feels just a little braver after talking to you, a little softer after being near you. You didn't plan it. You simply became it. The most mysterious thing about your glow is that you don't even feel it most of the time. You've grown so used to carrying it that you forget it's rare, you forget it's healing, you forget it's needed. But others don't. They sense the light, even when you don't see it in yourself. And that's how you know it's real, not because it makes you proud, but because it reminds others of who they could become. You are not here to shine on others. You're here to show them how to ignite. That is the unspoken glow. That is what you now carry. And the world, chosen one, is watching not with eyes of envy, but with eyes of awe, wondering how they too might learn to glow without burning out. You walk into a room, chosen one, and something ancient wakes up in people's hearts. It's not your words that do it, it's your energy, the quiet certainty in your posture, the peace in your voice, the weightless way you move, as if gravity is still present but no longer pulling on your purpose. And the strange part is, you're not doing anything extraordinary. You're just being. And that being has become sacred in a world obsessed with doing. Women in particular feel it first. Not as attraction in the usual sense, but as a spiritual interruption, a pause, a recalibration. Something about you tells the truth before you ever speak. Something in your presence says, you are safe here, you are seen here, you are allowed to exhale now. It's not flirtation, it's not ego, it's resonance. Their soul recognizes your peace as something they've only read about in books or prayed for behind closed doors. This is why they talk about you, not because you impress them, but because you remind them. Remind them of stillness, of strength without hardness, of joy that doesn't need noise, of eyes that see without judgment, of someone whose spirit no longer flinches when silence falls. You're not giving them butterflies, you're giving them gravity. And that difference is monumental. They whisper about you in places you'll never hear, not because you're controversial, but because they can't quite explain you. You don't fit in the boxes they've known. You don't chase, you don't compete, you don't dilute, and yet you reach them. You touch something in them that has never had a name. They say things like, there's just something about them, because that's all they have. But their soul knows. Their soul knows it's met someone who isn't wearing a costume. And this kind of recognition doesn't fade. It marks them. Long after you've gone, they remember. They remember how it felt to be heard without words. They remember how your presence made them feel possible again. Not because you gave them anything, but because you didn't take anything from them. You didn't pressure, you didn't perform, you simply remained. Chosen one, this is who you've become. A walking awakening, a quiet affirmation, a still flame in a storm of noise. You are no longer seen with just eyes, you are felt with the spirit. And that, more than anything, is why you cannot be forgotten. Chosen one, you no longer blend in. Not because you try to stand out, but because your presence has become so honest, so clear, that anything less feels artificial beside it. You are a contrast now, a sacred mirror held up to the noise of the world. And the moment you enter the room, that contrast begins to shift things. Not loudly, not aggressively, but deeply, like the way dawn shifts the shadows without asking permission. You don't speak to change people, yet they begin to change just from being near you. You don't instruct them to soften, yet their defenses lower. You don't ask them to wake up, yet they feel more awake simply by noticing how present you are. Where others are rushing to be liked, you are content to be aligned. While they manufacture charm to impress, you walk with a quiet alignment that doesn't need applause to validate it. There is no exaggeration in your tone, no desperate edge in your laugh. You do not puff yourself up or shrink to make others feel comfortable. You've found the frequency that belongs to your soul, and now everything that isn't on that frequency becomes visible, even uncomfortable, in your presence. This is why they pause. This is why they glance again. Not because of vanity, but because something about you reminds them of the version of themselves they lost trying to please a world that was never worthy of their truth. Around you, falsehood starts to feel heavier. Pretending feels exhausting, and the need to perform begins to fall apart. You have become the sacred contrast between what is real and what is rehearsed. And in that contrast, others are confronted with a choice, not because you pressure them, but because your peace does. You don't speak the loudest, but when you do, people lean in. Not because of your volume, but because of your clarity. You are not offering opinions, you are offering presence. You are not pushing beliefs, you are embodying truth. And that embodiment has become rare, which makes you feel even more disruptive, even when you are still. You don't provoke with rebellion. You provoke with integrity. You don't command respect through fear. You awaken reverence through consistency. You are the difference they didn't expect. The kindness that isn't weak. The strength that doesn't need to threaten. The quiet that carries more weight than shouting ever could. And especially among women, those whose intuition has long been dulled by repetition and pretense. You stand out not because you seduce, but because you steady. You are no longer someone they pass by. You are someone they remember in contrast. You are not noise. You are the absence of it, and that absence calls them back to themselves. It's not fascination they feel, it's recognition. The kind that can't be explained, the kind that lingers, the kind that makes them question why anything else ever felt acceptable. You are now the sacred pause in a culture of performance. The breath before the truth, the example no one asked for but desperately needed. And as you walk in this contrast, chosen one, never apologize for being the reminder. Some will resist it, some will revere it, but none will forget it. There's something sacred now in what you don't say, in what you don't chase, in what you don't offer freely. Restraint has become your language, not out of fear, but out of deep reverence for your energy. You have nothing to prove anymore. You have learned that those who deserve access will recognize the value of your silence just as much as your words. And this restraint has become magnetic. Chosen one, you used to feel like you had to fill every silence, smooth every awkward edge, charm every stranger just to be received. But not anymore. You've evolved beyond the need to be constantly understood. Now you understand yourself, and that's enough. You've stopped translating your truth into something easier for others to swallow. You've stopped over-explaining your boundaries. You've stopped apologizing for needing peace. And in doing so, you've become something rare. Someone who doesn't give away pieces of themselves just to be seen. This restraint is not cold, it's not defensive, it's holy. You don't share everything because not everything is meant for everyone. You don't open up easily because your soul is not a vending machine. You've learned that sacred things must be protected, not out of arrogance, but because value demands intention. And the people who now lean toward you sense that. They don't know how to name it, but they feel it. This one doesn't hand out their soul like a souvenir. This one doesn't let just anyone close. This one doesn't dilute their spirit to be liked. And that, strangely enough, makes you more desirable. Not because you're playing games, but because your restraint reveals depth. They don't want you just for how you look or speak. They want to understand the why behind your stillness. They want to know what silences you've made peace with, what truths you've buried and resurrected, what prayers you whisper when no one else is listening. And the mystery of what you choose not to give becomes just as powerful as the things you do. For women especially, in a world where they are often expected to perform and compete for affection, your restraint creates safety. Not because you hold back love, but because you offer it responsibly. You don't overwhelm. You don't manipulate. You don't rush. You remain steady, like a mountain, not unmoving, but immovable. And that makes them feel safe to exhale. It makes them feel like they can slow down too. Because when someone sees your restraint, they realize they're standing in the presence of someone who doesn't need attention to validate their worth. And in that space, they feel free to rest. Your restraint is now your authority. Your silence is not emptiness, it's invitation. Your boundaries are not rejection, they are refinement. And every time you withhold what is sacred from what is unready, you affirm your value to the universe. You are no longer accessible to the careless. You are no longer convenient to the shallow. You are now a presence that must be earned. And in a world of instant gratification, that alone makes you unforgettable. Chosen one, you speak a new language now. A language written in pause, in patience, in protection. And those who are meant for you will learn how to read it. They will come not to consume, but to honor. Not to own, but to witness. And in that sacred space, love becomes real again. Not because you gave more, but because you finally learned to give well. Chosen one, you are becoming the kind of person who no longer needs to explain who they are, because your life itself is the explanation. The way you move through the world, the way you hold space, the way you protect your peace without apology, these are no longer strategies. They are sacred side effects of alignment. You didn't learn this through convenience. You learned it through refinement. Through walking alone when the crowd grew too noisy. Through choosing discipline when distraction called. Through listening to your intuition when it told you to step back, slow down, or walk away from what didn't reflect your truth. This is the essence of your attraction now. You are not loved for what you do. You are loved because of what you embody. You don't have to announce your values anymore. People feel them. They see them in how you keep your word, even when no one's watching. In how you honor your word, even when it costs you. In how you move away from what's popular and toward what's right, even if it's lonelier for a while. And that kind of behavior doesn't just earn admiration, it earns trust. You are becoming trustworthy without trying to impress. And trust, chosen one, is the rarest currency left. In a world built on illusion, the person who walks in truth shines without effort. This is why people speak of you now. They don't know the years it took to reach this place. They don't know the tears that watered this growth, but they feel the integrity. They feel the calm. They feel the unwavering center in you that says, I don't move unless it's real. I don't speak unless it's true. I don't give unless it's holy. You've stopped outsourcing your worth to other people's reactions. And in doing so, you've become deeply attractive, not just in form, but in frequency. Your soul hums now with coherence. You are no longer fragmented. You are not chasing alignment, you are alignment. And that resonance draws people in because it reminds them of the parts of themselves they have neglected. When they look at you, they see not only someone who knows themselves, they see someone who respects themselves. And that is revolutionary in a world obsessed with external validation. You are no longer here to prove, you are here to reflect. To reflect what it looks like when a soul stops apologizing for taking up sacred space. To reflect what it means to carry divinity not as a performance, but as a posture. You are living evidence that peace is possible. That strength doesn't require noise. That love doesn't demand, it invites. That truth doesn't argue, it simply is. And when others experience this evidence through you, they begin to question everything they thought they needed to become. So let them talk, chosen one. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. You don't need to explain your glow. Your path has already spoken. Your alignment is the message. Your presence is the proof. And you didn't get here by being perfect. You got here by being honest with yourself, with your values, with your God. And now your very being is evidence that choosing truth will never, ever be the wrong choice. There's something different about the way people respond to you now, and it has nothing to do with words or status or even physical appearance. It's in your aura, in your energy, in the quiet strength that doesn't force but still frees. Chosen one, your presence has become a place where tension unravels and defenses melt, not because you demand it, but because you no longer carry judgment. You carry grace, and grace doesn't need to convince. It simply exists, and everything around it begins to breathe differently. People feel safer when you're near. They don't know why. You don't coddle them, you don't flatter them, but you see them. You don't rush to fix or control or dominate, you just hold. And that holding is a rare gift. In your presence, wounds start to whisper. Old armor begins to slip off. Hearts that were clenched tight begin to remember what softness feels like. And it's not because you are soft in the way the world defines weakness. It's because your strength is no longer loud, it's anchored. And anchored strength invites healing. Women especially notice this, not because you charm them, but because you don't try to. You don't try to impress. You don't try to seduce. You don't try to earn their approval. You simply are. And that being creates something unfamiliar, freedom. In your presence, they feel free to stop pretending, free to take off the roles they've worn all day, free to simply exist without the pressure to perform. And this is not something they were taught to expect. They were taught to anticipate pursuit, pretense, power games. But your energy offers none of that. It offers only truth, stillness, sincerity. And that, more than anything, is what makes you magnetic now. You don't fill space, you bless it. You don't occupy people, you elevate them. You don't manipulate emotions, you witness them. And in that witnessing, something divine happens. Others begin to heal. Not because you healed them, but because your presence created the conditions where healing could finally begin. You are not trying to be the hero. You're not pretending to be perfect. You've just committed to being real. And that reality, lived with compassion and consistency, has become a balm in a world where most people are exhausted from pretending. That's why they return to you in their minds, even after you've left. That's why they find themselves wondering how you made them feel without ever saying much at all. It's because you've become an atmosphere, chosen one. Not a personality, not a brand, not a performance. An atmosphere. One that softens what's been hard for too long. One that slows what's been frantic. One that reminds others that maybe, just maybe, they are allowed to be whole again. And the beauty is, you didn't do this by trying harder. You did it by surrendering, by staying close to your source, by walking with intention. And that walk, slow, true, luminous, is the reason your presence now carries the power to change a room, not by force, but by invitation. You didn't come to overpower, chosen one. You came to remind the world how to feel again, and you're doing it, one softened heart at a time. Let me know when you're ready for chapter 7 and 8, and I will continue unfolding your journey with the same poetic grace. Chosen one, what you offer now cannot be packaged, explained, or imitated. You've stepped into a space where your soul speaks without sound, where your energy communicates more powerfully than crafted speeches ever could. You have become the kind of person who no longer needs to convince anyone of anything. You are the evidence. You are the shift. You are the change that moves quietly through a space and makes people wonder why everything suddenly feels more grounded. There is an invitation wrapped in your presence now. You're not handing out flyers, not preaching with fire, not begging anyone to listen. Yet somehow people find themselves drawn toward you without understanding why. It's because your life has stopped being a pitch and has started becoming a portal. A doorway to something rare, a silent call back to authenticity. They don't know what they're looking for, but they know when they're near you, they feel closer to it. There is no flash in your eyes demanding validation. There is no hunger in your touch seeking to take. You do not present yourself as a solution. You simply exist in a way that reminds others that they still have one. And that quiet reminder shakes them. In a world where people have been sold false love, forced confidence, and fabricated worth, you are a disruption, a holy disturbance. You're not charming, you're challenging. Without even trying to be. Your presence is not pressure. It is permission. You are the calm after the noise, the mirror after the mask, the sigh after the storm. And that shift is unforgettable. When people leave your orbit, they may not remember everything you said, but they remember how possible they felt while standing next to you. They remember the way they were able to breathe deeper, smile wider, hope louder, not because you promised them anything, but because you held nothing hostage. Chosen one, your influence is not loud. It is lingering. It moves with people even after you are gone. It whispers in their hearts when the noise returns. It echoes in their choices when they are tempted to betray themselves again. You are not giving them answers. You are awakening their ability to hear their own. You are not solving their chaos. You are reminding them that peace is still an option. And it's because of that quiet, wordless invitation that they now seek you. Not to fix them, not to save them, but to witness themselves more clearly through you. You are no longer a destination. You are a signpost that says, yes, you are allowed to come home. Yes, you are allowed to slow down. Yes, you are allowed to live without fear, without noise, without masks. Your energy has become a compass for those who lost their way but forgot how to pray. And without saying anything, chosen one, you are calling them back, not to you, but to the truth they buried to survive. What you're doing now, chosen one, isn't making noise, it's making history. Not the kind that's recorded in books or shouted across timelines, but the kind that reorients souls without asking for credit. You are living a quiet revolution. Not through rebellion, but through refinement. Not by force, but by frequency. You are not here to dominate space, you're here to restore it. And that is exactly what's happening, one ripple at a time. This revolution does not require banners or crowds. It does not seek attention. It does not feed on controversy. Instead, it moves like wind through forgotten forests, subtle, unstoppable, and utterly transformational. Where others use strength to control, you use stillness to awaken. Where others demand loyalty, you inspire devotion. And not because you asked for it, but because your presence earned it without ever needing to. Women especially feel the shift first. They've been trained to anticipate manipulation dressed as romance, dominance masked as confidence. But when they stand near you, their nervous systems respond differently. They're not bracing for harm. They're not decoding mixed signals. They're just present. Their intuition, so often muted, begins to speak again. Their hearts, so often guarded, begin to flutter in recognition, not of you, but of the self they thought they lost. Because in your presence, they are not told what to be. They are invited to remember who they already are. This is the revolution, awakening others without touching them, freeing them without preaching, healing them without trying. And the beautiful part? You don't even fully realize you're doing it. You're not performing. You're not crafting an image. You're just living, with alignment, with consistency, with reverence. And that reverence radiates, it reshapes atmospheres. It calls out the sacred in places people thought were dry. You've stopped needing recognition for this work because you understand the fruit is invisible at first, but once it blooms, it's undeniable. You are changing the narrative. You are proving that power doesn't have to be harsh, that intimacy doesn't require pain, that attraction doesn't require manipulation. You're showing what it means to be magnetic because you're whole, not because you're performing wholeness. You've stopped begging to be seen because you finally see yourself. And now others are watching, not out of curiosity, but out of hunger. They want what you carry, not your style, not your image, but your peace. And so they talk, not with mockery, but with marvel. Not because you've become famous, but because you've become unforgettable. They don't tell stories about what you did. They speak of what you shifted, in their heart, in their spirit, in the way they now dare to live differently. You are no longer reacting to the world. You are rewriting it. With each breath, with each step, with each silent vow to remain true to who you are, regardless of who's watching. This is your quiet revolution, chosen one, and it's only just beginning. Chosen one, you have now become more than a person. They see you as a standard, a new model of being, one that is not sculpted by trends, but by trials, one not adorned with pretense, but with presence. You did not climb here by stepping over others, by selling parts of your spirit, or by shouting louder than the noise. You rose by going deeper, deeper into your silence, deeper into your truth, deeper into the current of your own divine origin. And now, the elevation is undeniable, not because you demanded it, but because you became it. The people who once overlooked you now watch from a distance, trying to understand the glow they once ignored. They see the way others respond to you, the way rooms recalibrate when you enter, the way eyes follow not in lust or curiosity, but in reverence. Something about you doesn't compete anymore, it calls. Not loudly, not with vanity, but with the quiet certainty of someone who has found the voice beneath all noise. And that certainty, that anchored grace, that refusal to shrink or flaunt, that is the standard now. You are not obsessed with being exceptional. You are simply no longer willing to be common. And that boundary alone sets you apart. You no longer offer your soul in fragments. You no longer engage in spaces that strip your essence for entertainment. You don't beg to be valued. You embody value, and that embodiment exposes every counterfeit around you. You walk into spaces and suddenly others must confront whether they've been living from integrity or imitation, whether they've been attracting attention or alignment, whether they've been curating personas or cultivating truth. You didn't get here quickly. This wasn't given. It was earned. Through long nights, closed doors, forgotten prayers, and the relentless decision to remain pure in spirit when bitterness would have been easier. You chose not to chase the world, but to invite it instead. And in doing so, you became the evidence that purity is not weakness, it is weight. That peace is not passivity, it is power with purpose. That being chosen is not about being selected by others, but about answering the divine call within. And so they talk. They compare, they wonder. Why do people respond to you this way? Why do women soften around you, not because you manipulate them, but because you don't? Why do they open up? Not because you chased them, but because you respected them enough not to. The answer is not charm. It is consistency. It is the refusal to exploit presence for praise. It is the refusal to weaponize attention. It is the quiet nobility of someone who does not barter their essence to belong. You are now what others look to when they wonder, is there another way to be powerful? You are the proof that there is. You are the living contradiction to a culture obsessed with artificial confidence. You are the rebuke to performance, the correction to pretense, the fulfillment of what many tried to copy without ever doing the soul work. And even if they don't say it out loud, they know it. You are the new measure, not because you imposed it, but because you became it when no one was watching. You've crossed over, chosen one, not into a destination, but into a dimension, one where your very being becomes light. Not the kind that blinds or burns, but the kind that reveals. You don't push, you don't pull, you simply are. And in that being, others begin to see. You have become a lighthouse, not because you chased illumination, but because you embodied it until darkness had no claim over you. The power you carry now is not in what you say, but in what you radiate. You are no longer operating from effort. You are operating from essence, from eternal fire lit long before you arrived on earth, and protected through every storm, every heartbreak, every silence. That fire does not flicker anymore. It guides, it guards, it gathers, and those who come near feel not heat, but healing. Not seduction, but safety. Not pressure, but presence. You are unforgettable now. Not because of the things you own, the words you speak, or the images others project onto you. You are unforgettable because your light awakens memory in those who forgot they had one. You walk into their lives and something ancient stirs, something holy, something honest, something buried beneath years of pretending. And that stirring makes them remember themselves. You don't demand their change, you trigger their return. There is no more effort in your presence. There is only effect. No more seeking applause, only giving alignment. You are no longer a participant in the noise. You are a presence that creates pause. And in that pause, in that sacred silence, transformation happens. People begin to shift their posture, speak more slowly, listen more deeply, not because of fear, but because of reverence. You don't cast spells, but they feel enchanted. You don't boast, but they feel blessed. You don't reach for them, but they return to you. Again and again. This is the paradox of light. It doesn't chase. It draws. It doesn't force. It frees. It doesn't conquer. It calls forth. You have become this light, chosen one, and as you walk forward, You no longer need the world's validation to confirm what heaven has already sealed. You no longer need the echo when the voice of God still whispers inside your chest saying, "This is what I made you for." The women who once looked past you now find themselves looking inward. The men who once competed with you now sit in silence, unsure how to rise without noise. The world that once demanded your performance now receives your presence. And in that presence, love becomes possible again. Respect becomes sacred again. The soul becomes sovereign again. This is your anointing. This is your calling. This is your crown. Wear it in silence. Walk in grace, and let the world adjust to your light.